How's it going, everyone? Salvi from Weather SpongeBob. Today is November 20th, 2021, and today we're going to forecast the 2021-2022 winter season and see which areas could receive the most snowfall this winter, and if your area will receive cooler than average conditions, warmer than average conditions, or drier than average conditions, as we'll be taking a look at several key factors such as the El Nino and La Nina phases, as well as other factors that will determine what type of winter you'll see for this season. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the Enzo outlook over the next couple months, which pretty much forecasts whether or not we'll experience a La Nina in the future or an El Nino in the future. And you see that over the next several months, including the winter months, you see that most likely we're going to be in a La Nina for majority of the winter months, with December, January, and February having over or right around a 70% chance or more of experiencing a La Nina this winter. So we should expect La Nina type conditions this winter for a lot of the United States. It's not until we get into the month of March, where neutral phase is almost as equal as a La Nina phase occurring during that month, but by that time the winter should pretty much be over for the most part, so it won't make a big change in terms of how much snowfall or how much cooler or warmer than average it'll be for your overall winter forecast. So if we were to take a look what typically happens during a La Nina phase, you see that we see cooler than average conditions throughout the northern Midwest states. We see more moist than average conditions throughout the Pacific Northwest as a result of a Pacific jet stream moving through during a La Nina that typically brings a lot more troughs to the Pacific Northwest, as well as cooler than average conditions overall, because of course when there's more clouds in the sky, it pretty much reflects back a lot of that short wave radiation from the sun back into space, so it doesn't really get absorbed by the surface to warm temperatures up. So as a result, it should be cooler and more moist than average during a La Nina year in the Pacific Northwest, and typically during a La Nina year we see drier and warmer than average conditions for a lot of the southern United States, and we see more moist than average conditions right around the Ohio River Valley states, where we do see a variable polar jet stream that far in the south, to where a lot of troughs will move through frequently through the Ohio River Valley region, and we could see more cold blasts as a result of this polar jet stream dip induced by a La Nina. So throughout the northern United States, it's typically colder than average for during a La Nina year, but there are several other factors we need to take a look at before we could make the jump to the conclusion that it'll be a cooler than average winter throughout the northern United States and a drier than average winter throughout the southern United States. If we were to take a look at the La Nina intensities over the past century, you see that we had a large majority of weak La Ninas, which includes years such as 1955, 1965, moderate, and a couple strong La Ninas here and there. So pretty much what I did is I took all of the intensities of every La Nina that has occurred over the past 70 years and pretty much put it in a climatology data plot that compares the average temperature and precipitation to the long-term average that's between 1991 and 2020. And the results show that during a La Nina year, compared to the long-term average, the temperatures are a lot cooler than average for majority of the northern United States, with an emphasis more on the northern Midwest states, where we see Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, with far cooler than average temperatures ranging from around 4 degrees below average Fahrenheit throughout the entire winter season. This extends from the months of December to March, by the way, so pretty much extending for the rest of the winter. You see that during a La Nina, it's typically a lot colder than average throughout the northern United States. So that's definitely something we need to consider when making this forecast. During a La Nina, it's a lot colder than average for the northern United States. So For a lot of the northern United States, you might want to prepare for a cooler than average winter, especially in the northern Midwest states, where on average temperatures should be 4 degrees below average for the rest of the winter season. If the La Nina, if we go by historical data of what has occurred during a La Nina, there of course are several factors we need to take a look at as well to really determine if it'll be that cold this winter for the northern United States. But chances are, based on the historical data of what typically happens during a La Nina, you clearly see that it's more likely than not we're going to experience a cooler than average winter for the northern United States based on historical data. Now, taking a look at the precipitation forecast during the historical data on precipitation for La Ninas compared to the long-term average, you see that typically most of the United States experiences right around average precipitation during La Nina years, as there isn't such a huge departure from average when it comes to precipitation as compared to, let's say, temperature, where we clearly see a correlation between La Ninas and temperatures. Here, for the most part, the precipitation is mostly average, but we do have several areas that do receive typically more moist than average conditions, as well as more warmer than average conditions during a La Nina. We of course see the Pacific Northwest experience more moist than average conditions during a La Nina year, and this is no surprise because we typically, like I said, we typically see a Pacific jet move through the Pacific Northwest that brings a lot of troughs to the Pacific Northwest to moisten up the atmosphere and overall make the season a little bit more moist for you guys in the Pacific Northwest. And we typically see drier than average conditions for a good portion of the southern United States. This includes the Southwest, especially Southern California, where we do see the precipitation well below average for you guys. We also see below average precipitation throughout the Texas, as well as extending to Florida, especially southern Florida. You typically see below average precipitation during a La Nina, and even portions of the mid-Atlantic states, such as the Interstate 95 corridor, you typically see below average precipitation, which is quite interesting to say the least. But for the most part, even in the areas where the precipitation is below average, there isn't such a huge correlation between much drier than average conditions during a La Nina compared to the long-term average. So you might want to take it with a grain of salt and not just assume that you're going to experience a drier than average conditions throughout in the areas where you're experiencing below average precipitation, because you see that you're barely in the yellow contour, which shows that while typically the precipitation is below average during a La Nina, it isn't so much below average to where you could immediately assume it's going to be much drier than average, because we definitely could see more moist than average conditions if the other factors get into play and moisten up the atmosphere a little bit. So take it with a grain of salt, but typically during a La Nina, you see drier than average conditions throughout the southern United States and more moist than average conditions throughout the Pacific Northwest. But for the most part, when it comes to precipitation, you see pretty much average precipitation for most of the United States. So make sure to keep that in mind and into consideration that for most of the United States, precipitation should be average, but the key thing that you may notice is the temperatures will be a lot colder in the northern United States. Now, take a look at give me just 1 second. Take a look at the average snowfall during La Nina years. You're going to see that the northern United States typically sees a lot more snowfall than average overall. You see that the Pacific Northwest experiences much more snowfall during a La Nina, as well as the northern Midwest, and this extends to the Northeast as well, the interior portions of the Northeast, while we see typically less snowfall than average right around the New Mexico area in southern Colorado, as well as Arizona. And we do see a little bit less snowfall than average right around the mid-Atlantic states. So that's definitely something we need to keep in mind. But for the most part, most in the northern United States typically experiences more snowfall than average during a La Nina, which is pretty much correlated with the fact that during a La Nina, we see more jet stream dips. So, of course, the temperatures are colder. When we see more jet stream dips, we see more unstable air for snowstorms to develop and a lot more convection to occur for more snow to happen. So as a result, we typically see snowier than average conditions throughout the northern United States during a La Nina winter. So you should expect more snowier than average winter, more likely than not throughout the northern United States based on historical data based on the snowfall patterns during La Nina years. And what more snowfall than average also does is it cools down the area throughout the snowpacks. When there's a lot of snow on the ground or when there's a large amount of snowpack, typically the snow absorbs a lot of short wave radiation from the sun rather than the surface. And as the snow absorbs a lot of that short wave radiation, it pretty much cools down the atmosphere during the melting process, because a lot of that energy from the short wave radiation breaks down the H2O molecules from a solid phase to a liquid phase during the melting process of snow, and that typically takes out energy from the area surrounding it, and that cools down the atmosphere overall. So when there's more snowfall than average or higher than average snowpacks, that cools down the atmosphere, which is another thing you want to keep in mind, that not only would it be snowier than average, but typically when there's more snow, it's colder than average as well, since the snow absorbs a lot of that short wave radiation from the sun to cool down the atmosphere within a specific area. So that's definitely something you need to keep in mind as well when taking a look at the average snowfall patterns during La Nina years. Next, let's take a look at the computer models, the CFS model, over the next couple months. And when we take a look at the temperature anomaly between the months of December, January, and February, which are pretty much the three main winter months, you see that the forecast is that majority of the United States will be under warmer than average conditions, while the northern tier of the United States or the northwestern portion of the United States will experience cooler than average conditions. Now, I'll take the CFS model with a grain of salt, because there have been times where it's been quite wrong in the past. It is getting a little better as we head closer to the winter, because before, just a couple months prior, it was forecasting pretty much the entire United States to experience warmer than average conditions, which contradicts what typically happens during a La Nina, where we see cooler than average conditions throughout the northern United States. But you see that now, since we're headed closer to the winter months of December, January, and February, the temperature anomalies are going a little bit more in line with what typically happens during a La Nina, and that's cooler than average conditions throughout the northern United States. It's still a little bit too warmer than average compared to what a La Nina typically brings, but we also need to take into consideration that computer models also take in other factors, such as maybe water temperature, which comparing historical data of La Nina doesn't really factor that in. So there could be some validity to this computer model, maybe for the Northeast, where we could maybe see a warmer than average winter, even if it does go against what typically happens during a La Nina. But I'd say the CFS model is spot on with bringing warmer than average temperatures throughout the southern United States. So I'd say for the most part this should be correct, but I'd make a couple of changes when it comes to the CFS model's forecast of the temperature anomalies, as I do still expect it to be cooler than average throughout the northern United States as a result of a La Nina typically bringing more jet stream dips to the region. Now, taking a look at the precipitation anomaly over the next 3 months, you see that it's expected to be more moist than average throughout the northern United States, and this could be a concern for a lot of you guys who maybe don't like snow, or this could be good news for a lot of you guys who like the snow, because if it's a lot more moist than average throughout the northern United States, along with a La Nina bringing more jet stream dips, and we could see more snowstorms than average this winter throughout the northern United States. And if this coincides with each other, this could be quite an active winter for a lot of you guys. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. As for the southern United States, it's pretty much agrees with what typically happens during a La Nina, which brings more drier than average conditions throughout the southern United States. And so I'd be pretty confident for a much drier than average winter to occur for much of the southern United States, and a more moist and cooler than average winter for the northern United States overall. Next, taking a look at the Drought Monitor. Taking a look at that, or at the ocean chapters, you're gonna see that. Taking a look at the temperature anomaly, you're gonna see that typically along the east right now the sea surface temperatures off the east coast are much warmer than average, and this could be big because if the sea surface temperatures are warmer than average, then that could warm up the temperatures by a couple of degrees, the average temperature by a couple of degrees along the coast. So and this could prevent you guys from receiving maybe some snowstorms if the sea surface temperatures are a little bit too warmer, a little bit too much warmer, much warmer than average, because it could raise the temperature along the coast. So the rain snow line could be pushed further northward to where more of the Interstate 95 corridor cities, such as New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston, could receive more rain events rather than snow events. We have to see if the sea surface temperature will cool down along the East Coast over the next several months. But since we're in the months of November, it's going to be very hard for the sea surface temperatures to cool down at a rate quick enough to be at least around average or at least below average for a majority of the winter. So this could definitely prevent some snowstorms for you guys along the East Coast if the sea surface temperatures are warmer than average, which seems like it's going to be the trend headed into this winter. But I'd still expect a more moist and more snowy than average winter along the East Coast as a result of a La Nina typically bringing more jet stream dips to the region. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And another thing is that taking a look at the equatorial region, you see that the sea surface temperatures are much cooler than average, so we could be in for a strong La Nina headed into this winter. So that's definitely something we need to keep in mind as well. Now, taking a look at the drought monitor for the entire lower 48, you're going to see that the West Coast is still under just a very heavy drought, and this has been a trend for over a year now, where the drought has just been persistent and hasn't been going away. It's been going away a little bit right around the Pacific Northwest as a result of the Pacific jet stream moving through during the La Nina, which it has been bringing a little bit more troughs and moisture to the Pacific Northwest. So right around Seattle, you guys are now completely out of the drought for the most part, which is definitely good news. But you see, still majority of the West Coast is under a heavy drought at this point. And while I do believe it will eventually end for the Pacific Northwest, since of course a Pacific jet stream moves through during a La Nina, and that will definitely moisten up the conditions throughout the Pacific Northwest, I expect this drought to stay in the southern United States especially during a La Nina, because during a La Nina, it's a lot drier than average in the southern United States, the southwestern United States, and I expect this to continue. And since it's going to be drier than average, it's safe to bet that it'll also be warmer than average, since there won't be much clouds to block the short wave radiation from the sun from hitting the surface and heating up the area surrounding it. So I expect it to be drier and warmer than average as a result of this drought and a La Nina coming through this winter throughout the southwestern United States. While the northwestern United States, I do expect the drought to go away thanks to La Nina. But southwestern United States, since La Nina typically brings drier than average conditions, this drought should remain persistent throughout the next several months. Taking a look now at taking a look at the Take a look at the Arctic Oscillation. I apologize. I'm trying to switch between tabs with the keyboard, but it's just not working for me sometimes. Take a look at the Arctic Oscillation over index over the next couple of months. You see that we're expecting to enter the negative phase during the later portion of November and headed into December. You see that we could rebound back to a positive phase. So over the next couple of weeks, it should be cooler than average as a result of a negative Arctic oscillation, where the jet stream is a lot weaker and the cold air is more likely to divert further southward. So it should be cooler than average for the near future, but for the later future, if we remain in a positive phase, we could be in for a warmer than average winter. But I do expect us to go back into a negative Arctic oscillation in the future. That will definitely cool down the temperatures for the most part throughout the northern United States and bring more jet stream dips and more snowstorms. We've been in a positive Arctic oscillation for quite some time now, so it's safe to assume that we could be go back into a negative phase in the not only the near future, but even beyond into January and February. So I expect a negative Arctic oscillation to dominate this winter, since we've been in a positive Arctic oscillation for over the past month at this point. So I expect a negative Arctic oscillation to dominate over the next month or two, which is the worst of the winter for a lot of you guys. But it's very difficult to forecast, so take it with a grain of salt. Next, taking a look at my forecast for the 2021-2022 winter season. You're going to see that I'm expecting it to be extremely much more colder and snowier than average throughout the northern Midwest as a result of pronounced jet stream dips from a La Nina. That's going to bring a strong northwesterly flow throughout the northern Midwest for much cooler than average and snowier than average conditions to occur, where precipitation will fall mainly in the form of snow throughout the northern Midwest. For the Northeast, I'm expecting it to be colder and snowier than average, despite the warmer than average sea surface temperatures off the coast. And this is as a result of La Nina, which typically brings colder than average conditions to a lot of the northern United States. So if precipitation were to fall in the Northeast, it'll most likely fall in the form of snow. So we could see powerful snowstorms this winter throughout the Northeast. So make sure to prepare for an active winter for the Northeast as well. I'm expecting a winter mix right around the North Carolina, Virginia border and extending westward. This is pretty much an area where you could receive times where you could receive a major snowstorm, but other times it'll feel a lot like spring for you guys in the winter mix area, as it should primarily be an average winter for you guys. For the southern United States, I expect it to be warmer than drier than average, because that typically is what happens during the La Nina, where we don't see the subtropical jet stream bring more moist than average conditions throughout the southeastern United States, and it's just simply a lot drier during the La Nina throughout the southern United States. And for the Pacific Northwest, I'm expecting it to be more cold and moist than average as a result of a specific jet moving through the region, bringing more troughs and precipitation overall throughout the Pacific Northwest. So this is my winter 2021-2022 forecast, my 6th forecast. I might do another one before we really get into the winter season. If you want even more in-depth forecasts, however, just ask me in the comments your specific location or area, and I'll give you guys an in-depth forecast with how many inches of snow you should receive this winter, and if it will be colder and snowier than average in your specific region. So make sure to comment down below if you're curious for a more in-detail forecast for your specific location when it comes to this winter. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. I hope you guys have a good day.